Hello everyone, this is Dana Berman again with another video on LightWave and graphics. In this week we are going to go over a setup that I'm working out. I'm still experimenting with how to get motion vectors out of LightWave into the Real Smart Motion Blur plugin. If I come over here to the website, you can see that Real Smart Motion Blur is a plugin that's available for After Effects and a bunch of other systems, and it adds motion blur to video. And if you have a 3D program or a graphics program that can export the vector motion, the motion as a separate buffer, you can use that information to inform the motion blur how it should behave. Now you'll notice this is an incorrect version, but you can see that the background where nothing is moving is this kind of mustard color. And you can see here's our healthy motion vector file that Real Smart Motion Blur is expecting. And I'll note that I'm using DP Filter from Dennis Montagnier. I have no idea how to say his name exactly. But anyway, here's a donate button. You can click on here and give him some money to thank him for making all these fantastic plugins for LightWave that make it much more capable. Anyway, back in LightWave, like I said, here is my render, and here's what a motion vector looks like if you render it to the image viewer. Now the odd thing is this is not what it looks like when you actually save it out as a separate file. This is actually what LightWave exports. It's just a black and white image. I'm guessing from 0 to 1 as far as the values. Actually, it looks like 664 or 644% white is your color. So it's way above normal 8-bit values. So yeah, here's here's what LightWave exports as the motion vector things, and this is more of what we need to export for Real Smart Motion Blur, and I'm going to show you right now how I got to that image. So like I said, we needed to add the DP filter, and we can get to that through the, after it's added, we get to it through the image processing window, and I can turn that off. You can add it in two places. You can add it in the image filter, or you can add it in the pixel filter. At first I'll add it in the image filter just so it's a little, well, just because I can. So node image filter, you can see there it is, node image filter. Node image filter. Double click on it, and I'm going to need to tell it what buffers I'm using, so I'm going to use the motion X and motion Y. With the Real Smart Motion Blur, it is expecting the X to be on the red channel and the Y to be on the green channel and nothing on the blue channel. So let's come over here to my DP filter section and add a render buffer so we can see all of our buffers. And I'm going to use the X and the Y, so that's why I selected them over here. Next thing I need to add is a mix node. So down under Tools, I'm going to add a mixer. And I'm going to drag the motion X into the foreground color. And I'm going to add a constant scalar. And I'm going to set this to 0.5. This will give me 50% gray. So I'm going to drop that there into the background of the node. And what I want to do is I want to screen the foreground over the background. It's like a layers operation in Photoshop where you put one layer over top of the other. So I want the motion X to be in the foreground, and I want the scalar plugin to be in the background. And I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it, and I'm going to drop Y into the bottom one, into the foreground, and I'm going to drop the scalar into the background color, and there we have it. If I plug this directly into the color, you can see what's going on if I render. And this is the output of my Y channel. It's a gray background and white for positive motion and black for negative motion or something like that. I need to do a little bit more work though, because apparently Real Smart Motion Blur expects Y to be a little bit different than LightWave outputs it. So I'm going to go down to the math scalar section, and I'm going to add an invert. I'm going to drop that in after the Y mixer node. And now to combine both of those into a color, I'm going to come down to the tools section again and do add color. And remember I said X goes into red and Y goes into green, and now I can drop that into color, and you'll see it's purple. I don't want purple, so let me double click my make color and set my blue down to 0. I don't know why it defaults to something higher than 0, but there you go. Now when I hit F10, you'll see I have something that looks more like what RSMB expects. And if I switch to the alpha, you can see there's an alpha channel in it. Now this completely overwrites my render, which might be fine if you just want to do a separate pass for your vector output. You can see it renders really quickly. You don't need to have anti-aliasing on. You don't need to have shadows or ray tracing or anything on. So you can do it that way. Let me just hit, I just selected all these nodes and I'm going to copy them, because I might not want to have it overwrite my color. You know, I might want to save out my vector pass at the same time as I'm rendering out my beauty pass. To do that, I need to, instead of doing it down here in the image filter, I need to add a pixel filter. So node pixel filter. And again, it's the same setup. I'll just paste my node setup in there, and I'm going to plug it into any of these red ones over here. If I plug it into color, it'll behave the same way as the image filter, and it'll just override the color. And I need to come in here, double click on the pixel filter, and again I need to tell it which buffers I'm actually using. So it's very important you check on the motion X and the motion Y, otherwise it won't work. So there we go. That's out of the pixel filter. However, I can plug this into any of these other channels in here that are red. The red dot means it's a color input, so it has red, green, blue inputs. The other ones, the green ones, are just a grayscale value. So I could plug this in the radiosity color or ambient occlusion color or any of these red ones. I'm just going to plug into raw color. I'm not using raw color for anything else at the moment. So now when I render, there we have it. You don't really see anything. It looks like a normal render. However, if I go to my compositing buffer export and I turn on my raw RGB because I plugged it into raw color and my destination is image viewer, now when I render it, you'll see I have another layer up here I can look at, and that's my raw RGB layer. Now to save this out, you need to set your destination to image files and tell it where to save it and what kind of file format, and you'll probably want to do EXR or some other floating point file. And you have to be careful that you don't leave this on if you're done rendering your scene, because whenever you have something set to image files and the destination is image files and the base name is set, whenever you render, even if it's just a test render with an F9, whenever you render, it will save the file. So you want to either, if you're just experimenting, you want to make sure you set the destination to image viewer or uncheck this, because you don't want to overwrite something you've already rendered unless you actually want to overwrite something you've already rendered. But anyway, that's the basic setup. That is how you get it out of LightWave with the DP filter kit. And again, I can open up After Effects again, and this is what we get. It's you'll have to play with the colors, because this method that I've set up here, that node setup, doesn't it does not necessarily behave well with the default settings for the RSMB, and it doesn't necessarily have the same. I haven't gone through and figured out all the math to double check to make sure it's giving RSMB exactly what it wants, but you can see it comes in and it's a little crazy, so you'll probably want to reduce the vector scale quite a bit. So yeah, just experiment with your settings until you get something you like. It's not going to match LightWave's motion blur exactly, but it'll give you something much quicker and probably very adequate in most cases. There are some limitations with doing it this way, primarily probably if things overlap, you might have some issues. I haven't really experimented with that, but yeah, there you have it. So how to get into real smart motion blur out of LightWave. I hope this is an appropriate setup. If it's not, just let me know, and I can maybe do another video if I find a better method. But this is the stage of my experimentation right now. Please consider subscribing to this channel to be notified of future videos, and I hope this has been useful for you. Have a great day.